if you take um, a flea and just drop it into a glass jar, it will immediately try to jump out.
Right, obviously.
Yeah, and it will just smash right into the glass lid.
Yeah.
And it jumps and it hits the lid over and over, maybe like 20 or 30 times.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. But eventually, the flea actually learns. It perfectly calibrates its jump. So it peaks just a millimeter below that glass.
Wow. So it stops hitting its head?
Exactly. But here is where it gets kind of tragic. If you take the lid off that jar, the flea will still only jump to that exact same height.
Because it's conditioned.
Right. It has been permanently conditioned by this barrier that, no longer even exists.
Yeah.
And if you are listening to this right now, the odds are really high that you have an invisible lid of your own.
Oh, I mean, we all do. We build these internal parameters based on, like, past failures or just a fear of judgment or even just chronic stress,
Yeah, for sure.
And we recalibrate our potential to stay safe within those boundaries. But the most dangerous part isn't the boundary itself.
What is it then?
It's the fact that we completely forget the boundary is an illusion that we just blindly accepted.
Wow. Yeah, which brings us directly to why you sent us our primary source material for today's deep dive.
I was so tired of that self-help shelf.
Yes, you know exactly the shelf we're talking about, the one in your living room with all those books that give you this massive rush of motivation for, like, 3 days.
And then you inevitably revert right back to your baseline.
Exactly.
Right. So you sent us Daniel Scott's Storm Raised, the 7-week guided journal. And our mission for today's deep dive is highly specific.
We really need to figure out if this is just, another resident for that shelf of good intention.
Right. Like, does this tool actually survive contact with your real chaotic life? Is buying this journal actually worth it for you?
And to give you a definitive answer on that, we are running the journal's framework through an absolute stress test today.
Right. We're not just looking at it in a vacuum.
No, not at all. We are cross-referencing its 49-day structure with the heavy-hitting insights from 3 foundational texts. And those are James Clear's Atomic Habits, Curtis 50 Cent, Jackson's Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter, and Ant Middleton's The Wall.
All incredible books.
Seriously. So the premise of Scott's journal is literally right in the title, right? Storm Raised.
Yeah.
It operates on this idea that the storms, like the chaos, the pressure, the late-night panic attacks, the unexpected setbacks.
All the fun stuff.
Right, all the fun stuff. It says those aren't things you're supposed to hide from. The journal claims those storms are the required resistance for actual growth.
Which is a great claim, but, claiming that and executing it are 2 very different beasts.
Exactly. But what's interesting is the journal doesn't ask you to overhaul your whole life on day 1. It starts its first week entirely focused on awareness.
Using that daily thought audit.
Right.
And that starting point is so crucial. It's actually deeply validated by Ant Middleton's philosophy in his book, The Wall.
Oh, yeah. Middleton's take on frustration is fascinating.
It really is. He points out this fundamental misunderstanding that most of us have about the feeling of frustration. Like, we usually view frustration as a failure state, right?
Like we're doing something wrong.
Exactly. But Middleton argues the complete opposite. He says feeling intensely stuck or frustrated is actually this biological and psychological signal that you have evolved.
Wait, so being frustrated means you're growing?
Basically, yeah. You have simply outgrown your current circumstances, but your behavior just hasn't updated yet. You're rubbing up against the walls of your current life.
Okay, so the frustration is just the friction between who you were and who you need to be.
That's a great way to put it.
And Scott's journal tries to map that friction. Week 1 introduces this 24-hour thought audit.
Right.
You're instructed to pause 3 times a day and just document your dominant thought without judging it. Just write it down.
Like, are you currently focused on a fear, a grievance, maybe a solution?
Exactly. But I actually have to push back hard on this for a second.
Okay, go for it.
Because if I'm looking at this from the perspective of someone in a really high-stress job or someone whose life feels like it's totally falling apart.
Sure.
Like if my house is on fire, just noticing the smoke doesn't really help me, Just sitting there with a pen writing down, I am currently stressed about the fire, that feels incredibly passive.
I totally hear that.
Right. I mean, I want a tool that puts a fire out.
I get it, but premature action is often what builds that invisible fleetlet in the first place.
How so?
Well, when you are in a state of panic, your amygdala is basically hijacking your brain's processing center.
The whole fight or flight thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you try to, quote unquote, put the fire out, from that state of mind, you usually end up making reactive, poor decisions that just create way more chaos.
But surely taking action is better than just sitting there observing the panic.
Not if the action is blind. I mean, you cannot adjust a behavioral loop that you aren't fully conscious of.
Okay, fair point.
By physically documenting the thought, like actually putting ink on paper, you are engaging your prefrontal cortex. You are mathematically forcing your brain to step out of that emotional spiral and just analyze the data.
That's like a circuit breaker.
Exactly. The journal isn't asking you to put the fire out in week 1. It's asking you to realize that like half the time, you are the one holding the matches.
Wow. Okay, that hurts a little, but it makes a lot of sense.
Right. You have to locate the exact parameters of the wall before you can smash through it.
Okay, I'm with you. The act of writing is a neurological circuit breaker. It stops the amygdala hijack.
That's spot on.
But let's follow that logic. Let's say I've mapped out the walls. I know my dominant, unhelpful thoughts. But just staring at a wall doesn't move it, right?
No, it doesn't.
And knowing my thoughts doesn't automatically rewire my daily habits. I need an engine to actually drive the change.
Which naturally brings us to the operational phase of the journal. In weeks 2 and 3, Storm Raised shifts its focus to discipline and focus.
And this is where we really need to overlay James Clear's framework from Atomic Habits.
Oh, absolutely. Clear's central thesis is that lasting behavior change has very little to do with setting a goal.
Right, because behavior that is incongruent with your internal self-image will just never last.
Never.
If you secretly believe you are a disorganized person, no amount of color-coded planners is going to save you.
Exactly. Clear talks about this concept of identity voting. Like every single action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become.
And I noticed the journal leans heavily into this with its I am affirmations.
Yeah, the prompts.
Right, it prompts you to write things like, I am storm ready, or I am composed in difficulty.
There is a potential trap there, though, which we should talk about.
Oh, what kind of trap?
Well, affirmations are often misunderstood as like a magic trick. People think if they just stand in the mirror and say they are a millionaire, it will magically happen.
Right, the secret style.
Exactly. But Clear warns that if the objective evidence of your daily life totally contradicts the affirmation, you will just experience massive cognitive dissonance.
You'll literally feel like a fraud.
Yes, exactly.
And you know what? That is exactly why so many people quit journaling by like day 12.
Oh, the friction is just way too high.
It is. You stare at a blank page, you already have decision fatigue from your terrible day at work, and writing an essay about your feelings just feels like climbing Mount Everest.
So you just shut the book.
You shut the book, you put it in a drawer, and the cognitive dissonance wins. You basically just voted for the identity of a quitter.
But the Storm Raised journal actually anticipates this biological resistance.
Does it? How?
Well, think about Clear's very first law of behavior change. Make it obvious. And the corollary to that is to make it incredibly easy.
Right.
The journal totally removes the friction of the blank page by providing a rigid, unvarying structure.
Oh, right, the 3 questions.
Yes, you answer the exact same 3 functional questions every single day. Where am I now? What needs adjusting? What will I do next?
So you aren't paralyzed by what to write. The decision fatigue is entirely gone.
You are essentially just turning the crank on a machine. The journal actually states explicitly that discipline is about repetition, not intensity.
I love that.
Yeah.
And that repetition is how you hack the identity voting process, right?
Exactly.
When you answer those 3 questions for 14 days straight, you are laying down undeniable empirical evidence that you are someone who analyzes their life and makes adjustments.
The cognitive dissonance fades away.
Right. You start to actually align your self-image with the reality of your actions.
Exactly. You become a person who adjusts.
Okay, so the friction of the blank page is solved.
Yeah.
I'm turning the crank. My engine is running.
You're doing the work.
Right. But let's be honest here. It is very easy to be a disciplined monk when you are just sitting in a quiet room with a nice cup of coffee.
Oh, for sure.
What happens to this whole identity voting thing when my boss screams at me? What happens when a major client pulls out? Or, a personal relationship completely fractures? Does Clear's framework hold up under acute chaotic stress? Or do we need something harder?
That's the real test. When the external conditions deteriorate, habit formation often fractures unless it's protected by resilience.
Which is why the journal pivots in weeks 4 and 5 to emotional control.
And there is absolutely no better guide for thriving in acute, aggressive chaos than Curtis Jackson.
50 cents.
The one and only. His book, Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter, is brilliant for this.
I was completely engrossed by his philosophy. Jackson's entire worldview is built on navigating just the most severe storms imaginable.
Yeah, from surviving systemic poverty and violence on the streets to navigating the equally ruthless corridors of corporate boardrooms.
His underlying mandate is literally evolve or die.
And he views fearlessness not as this inherent genetic trait you're just born with, but as a heavily trained muscle.
He tells this incredible story in the book about being dropped by Columbia Records early in his career.
Right after he was attacked and shot. It was a moment of maximum vulnerability.
I mean, most people would let that kind of injustice completely break them.
They'd fall into what Jackson calls the resentment trap.
Yes, they'd spend all their energy complaining about how unfair the industry is, essentially just waiting for an apology that will never, ever come.
But Jackson understood that resentment is just another invisible lid.
Another flea jar.
Exactly. If you don't fix your own problems, you suffer. End of equation. So he didn't complain. He just compartmentalized the setback.
He went straight to the mixtape circuit to prove his raw value directly to the market.
And he forced the industry to come back to him on his terms, eventually releasing one of the biggest albums in history.
What I found so brilliant in his book is the distinction he makes between 50 Cent and Curtis Jackson.
Oh, the duality.
Yes.
Yes.
He talks about 50 Cent as the aggressive, fearless persona he had to create just to survive the chaos of his early environment.
Right.
But he acknowledges that if he'd remained only 50 Cent, he would have totally self-destructed.
He needed the calculated, strategic, long-term thinking of the Curtis Jackson persona to actually maintain his success.
And as I was reading that, it immediately clicked with the Week 4 challenge in the Storm Rays Journal.
The pause practice.
Yes. The journal asks you to institute a mandatory 10-second pause when you are emotionally triggered by an external storm before you're even allowed to respond.
It's so hard to do in the moment.
It's incredibly hard. But I realize that 10-second window is literally the biological bridge between the 50 Cent reaction and the Curtis Jackson response.
Oh, that is a phenomenal synthesis. Let's actually look at the physiology of what you just described.
Okay, lay it on me.
When a storm hits like an angry email or a sudden failure, your nervous system floods with cortisol.
Right.
You just want to react recklessly, to fight or flee. That's the survival persona, the 50 Cent. But by enforcing a 10-second pause, you are giving your prefrontal cortex just enough time to come back online.
Wow.
You transition from reacting out of raw emotion to responding out of strategy.
It's literally the difference between lashing out and ruining a relationship versus taking a breath and solving the actual problem.
Exactly. And Jackson uses another incredible story to illustrate this level of extreme focus. The story of Isaac Wright Jr.
Oh, man. Wright's story is the ultimate proof of concept for Week 5 of the journal.
For anyone who doesn't know, he was wrongly sentenced to life in a maximum security prison.
Just unimaginable.
He didn't have a quiet study or a comfortable chair or the luxury of a cute morning routine. He was surrounded by the screaming of inmates, the threat of violence, and the psychological weight of a life sentence for a crime he didn't even commit.
But instead of drowning in that resentment trap we talked about, he tapped into an almost terrifying level of focus.
He really did.
He studied the law from inside his cell, cross-examined corrupt witnesses himself, and eventually proved his own innocence, overturned his life sentence, and got out.
It gives you chills. And look, if Wright could find the focus to rewrite his destiny from inside a prison cell, you and I have absolutely no excuse when our phone buzzes with a stressful notification.
Ouch. Yeah, that put things in perspective.
Jackson asked this brutal question. What could you accomplish if you weren't addicted to your modern distractions?
And the Storm Rays Journal actually operationalizes this. In Week 5, it demands that you review your day and write down very specific things.
Like, what specific challenging situation did I face today?
Right. And how did I manage my emotional state during it? And, vitally, how will I respond more effectively the next time this trigger occurs?
It reframes every single frustration from a failure into a data point for your training.
That's brilliant. All right, so let's recap where we are. We've mapped the invisible walls with Middleton. We've built the engine of daily habits with Clear.
And we forged the emotional armor with Jackson.
Right. But surviving the storm isn't the end game, is it?
No. Eventually, you have to take the wheel and dictate where the ship is actually going.
And that brings us to the culmination of the 49 days, Weeks 6 and 7, alignment and ownership.
This is really where the synthesis of all our sources peaks. By week 7, the journal shifts from defensive processing to offensive ownership.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, Middleton argues that you have to aggressively cut out the people and environments that just drain your energy.
You're right.
Jackson demands absolute accountability, like no waiting for a savior, no blaming the system.
Evolve or die.
Exactly. And Clear shows that when you automate your identity through small actions, you yield massive compounding returns.
And the functional tool the journal uses to tie all this together in week 7 is called the control list.
Oh, I love the control list.
It's so good. It asks you to literally draw a line down the middle of a page. On the left side, you write out every single element of your current storm that you can actually control.
So like your effort, your sleep, your responses, your daily boundaries.
Exactly. And then on the right side, you write out everything you cannot control. The economy, other people's opinions, the traffic, the past.
And the instruction for that right side is brutal, but entirely necessary.
What is it? Release it.
See, but how do you actually do that? Release it sounds great on a bumper sticker, but how do you mathematically execute it?
By understanding locus of control theory,
Okay.
every single minute you spend agonizing over the right side of that list, the uncontrollable variables you are burning limited cognitive glucose.
You're just wasting fuel.
Exactly. You're spending actual biological energy on a void. The physical act of writing those things down on the right side of the paper externalizes them. It gets them out of your working memory.
Oh, I see.
And once your brain sees the visual boundary between what is yours to manage and what is not,
Yeah.
the cognitive load just drops.
So you channel 100% of your remaining energy into the left side of the list.
Yes, blame keeps you passive. Responsibility, even for things that aren't entirely your fault, creates immense power.
That is so profound. Which brings us to the ultimate question we promised to answer at the beginning of this deep dive.
The verdict. Right. We've run the stress test. We've looked at the underlying neuroscience of habits and the lived experience of extreme resilience. So, is Daniel Scott's Storm Ray's journal actually worth buying?
The verdict really comes down to the difference between theory and application.
How so?
You can read Atomic Habits, The Wall, and Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter. And if you do, you will have a deep intellectual understanding of the psychology of success.
Sure.
But reading about how a combustion engine works doesn't get you to the grocery store.
Right, you actually need a vehicle.
Exactly. The Storm Ray's journal acts as the vehicle. It takes the abstract concepts of identity voting, extreme ownership, and the prefrontal cortex override, and it forces you to physically execute them for 49 consecutive days.
It just doesn't allow you to just consume the information, feel a rush of dopamine for a weekend, and then quit.
No. By requiring you to write down your adjustments daily within a rigid, low-friction structure, it builds the actual neurological pathways required to not just survive a period of chaos, but to utilize it as a catalyst.
So if you want to stop collecting books for your shelf and actually build momentum, it is a highly effective operational tool.
Highly recommend it. It's worth it.
Awesome. So just to recap how we got here today. We started with awareness, pulling the invisible flea lid into the light so we could finally see the walls holding us back.
Then we examine discipline, where the simple, low-friction repetition of the journal builds a totally new self-image.
From there, we layered on resilience, using that 10-second pause to bridge the gap between our emotional reactions and our strategic responses.
And finally, ownership. Aggressively discarding the uncontrollable and focusing entirely on what we can execute today.
It is a compounding psychological shift. You don't master one week and leave it behind. You stack them.
That's the beauty of it.
But as we wrap up our analysis, there's one final angle to this that we haven't touched on yet, and it's something I really want you, the listener, to mull over.
Okay, let's hear it.
We spent this entire time talking about applying this 49-day framework to your own internal storms, your walls, your resilience.
But consider the ripple effect of this psychology.
Right. Once you recognize the invisible flea lid in yourself, you start seeing it in everyone else.
Oh, absolutely. You can't unsee it.
You start seeing it in your kids when they get frustrated with a math problem and just declare they are stupid.
Or you see it in your employees when they hit a minor obstacle and immediately wait for you to fix it for them.
Exactly. You see the people you care about trapped in their own resentment traps.
And that presents a really fascinating challenge, because when you see someone you care about hitting their invisible lid, your instinct is usually to swoop in, play the savior, and remove the obstacle for them.
To make their life easier.
Right.
But based on everything we've learned today from Middleton, Jackson, and Scott, If the storm is the exact resistance required for growth, then by constantly rescuing the people around you, you might actually be robbing them of their own evolution.
You might literally be the one keeping their flea lid in place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the question isn't just whether you're going to let yourself be raised by the storm.
The question is, do you have the discipline to let the people you love weather their own storms so they can be raised by them too?